Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? Emma Collins' small apartment was lit up by the glow of her desk lamp, while the entire neighborhood had already sunk into sleep. The clock read 12:30. At this hour, she should have been wrapped in a blanket, fast asleep. Instead, Emma sat hunched over her laptop, with dark circles under her eyes. Another endless workday had just come to an end. The morning had been swallowed by back-to-back meetings. The afternoon had been buried under a looming deadline for a marketing report full of lifeless numbers. Collins and Blackwood was thriving. Last year's revenue growth had been impressive, and the press never stopped showering praise. But for Emma, a low-level employee, the only thing she felt was the weight of endless paperwork. She muttered under her breath, fingers tapping on the keyboard. 100-page report. Who has the time to read all that? It's like the company measures success by the number of sheets of paper it wastes. To let off some steam, Emma opened a new email and typed in the address of a familiar confidant, Sophie, her college best friend. She pressed her lips together and began pouring out all her pent-up frustrations from the day. Sophie, I swear this place is heaven in the press, but hell in reality. As for CEO Nathan Blackwood, don't even get me started. Handsome, powerful, rich, but cold as a wax statue. And the way he runs things makes everyone miserable. Pointless procedures, endless reports, and departments that don't even work together. Everyone's so busy, they've lost all creativity. Emma smirked. The more she typed, the better she felt. Sure, the company's still growing, but that's thanks to its reputation and big contracts, not because the employees are thriving. If I were him, I'd cut down on the paperwork and actually listen to my staff's ideas. But no, he doesn't listen to anyone. The second he walks into a department, the whole room goes dead silent, like a snowstorm just swept through. When she finished writing, Emma leaned back in her chair and exhaled. Sending this email to Sophie would surely give them both a laugh tomorrow. But at that very moment, Muffin, her chubby, mischievous cat, suddenly leapt onto the desk. "Muffin, get down!" Emma cried. Too late. Its tail swiped across the desk, knocking a glass of water directly onto the keyboard. Emma panicked, grabbing tissues, wiping frantically, her other hand smashing random keys in the chaos. Before she could even process what was happening, a soft ping sounded. "Your message has been sent." Emma froze. Her eyes widened at the screen, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. She yanked open the sent folder, and her stomach dropped when she saw the line. To Nathan Blackwood. "Oh my God, no, Emma screamed, her voice breaking. It was supposed to be Sophie. Somehow the auto-suggest system had replaced the address, and she had clicked the most dangerous name in the world, the very man she had just insulted without mercy. In desperation, Emma clicked recall message, but the system responded coldly. This action is not available. Her face turned ghostly pale. The entire sarcastic rant, cold as a wax statue, endless procedures, stifling bureaucracy, was now sitting safely in CEO Nathan Blackwood's inbox. Emma buried her face in her arms on the desk, whispering in a trembling voice, "It's over. My life is ruined." Meanwhile, Muffin, the main culprit, sat smugly beside her, licking its fur with complete indifference, as if nothing had happened. Emma glanced at the cat, torn between laughing and crying. "Easy for you, but I'll probably be unemployed tomorrow." The room fell silent, broken only by the pounding of Emma's heart. Little did she know that the fatal press of the send button would mark the beginning of the biggest turning point in her life. The next morning, the 25th floor of the Blackwood Group headquarters gleamed under the early light. As usual, Nathan Blackwood began his day with a shot of espresso and an inbox overflowing with reports, invitations, and contracts. He scrolled through the usual flood until his eyes stopped at an unfamiliar subject line. Heaven in the press, hell in reality. Nathan frowned. This was clearly not the kind of subject line an employee normally sent to their CEO. He clicked it open, and the very first line hit him straight in the face. "Sophie, I swear this company looks dazzling in the press, but inside it's draining me to death. The CEO is as cold as a wax statue." Nathan froze. "Sophie? This wasn't an email meant for him. He scrolled down, reading line after line, each word cutting through the icy armor he'd always worn. The report approval process drags on forever. 5, 6 steps just to get anything signed off. Creative ideas die before they even get a chance. Departments work in silos, no connection at all. The press praises our grand campaigns, but the clients don't even see themselves reflected in them. For a brief moment, anger surged. Anyone else daring to write about him like this would have been fired instantly. But then his eyes caught the raw honesty woven into every sentence. Details so specific they couldn't have been fabricated. Nathan exhaled slowly and leaned back in his chair. She wasn't wrong. The report process was incredibly complicated. He had found it irritating more than once himself. The lack of cooperation between departments, he had heard whispers, but no one ever dared to say it outright. And that recent marketing campaign. He remembered the disappointing revenue figures, and worse, the comments from longtime clients. It's pretty, but it doesn't feel like us. He folded his hands, lips twitching in the faintest smirk. This email hadn't been written for him. That was what made it matter. The sender, a low-level employee venting to a friend, had no intention of provoking him, which meant every word rang with truth. Nathan pulled up the sender's details. Emma Collins, marketing associate, 5th floor. A name he didn't recognize. He had never once noticed her, but now he wanted to. He rose and walked to the wall of glass overlooking the city. Below, the streets pulsed with morning energy. His company was still thriving, still praised. However, this email revealed a hidden truth. If things continued to look good only on the surface, the creativity and passion of his people would wither away. And when that happened, the Blackwood Empire would face a very real danger. Nathan tightened his grip on the espresso cup, his eyes sharpening. Emma Collins. Reckless, yes, but maybe exactly what I need. He picked up the phone, his voice low and cold. Call someone from marketing on the 5th floor. I want to see Emma Collins. On the other end, his secretary hesitated, surprised. The CEO, Blackwood, had never personally summoned a low-level employee before, but his tone left no room for refusal. Hanging up, Nathan returned to his desk, his gaze still intense. The anger was still there, but alongside it stirred an unfamiliar curiosity. Someone who dared to say what everyone else stayed silent about. Might be worth more than 1,000 empty compliments. The shrill ring of the intercom made the entire marketing department on the 5th floor freeze in place. When the secretary's voice came through, Ms. Emma Collins, the CEO wants to see you immediately. Every head turned toward her as if she were a criminal being marched to trial. Emma stepped into the elevator, her hands trembling. Only one scenario played in her head. She would be scolded harshly, or worse, fired on the spot. On the 25th floor, after accidentally wandering into the executive boardroom and nervously introducing herself to the entire board, earning a round of roaring laughter, Emma finally stood before the wooden door engraved with the name Nathan Blackwood. The office was vast, cold, and gleaming. Nathan sat behind his desk, his sharp gaze piercing straight through her. Do you know why you're here? His voice was deep, icy. Emma swallowed hard. I assume it's because of the email last night. Nathan gave a slow nod. Correct. I read it, and I want to hear it from your own mouth. Why did you write those words? In Nathan's mind, he had already prepared for this. A low-level employee, confronted by the CEO, would surely scramble for excuses. My email got hacked. I sent it by mistake. Or, it was just a joke. He was nearly certain the girl standing before him would fumble and backpedal. But Emma lifted her head. Her eyes were clear, her voice shaky but steady. I never expected that email to land in your inbox. It was meant for my best friend. I just needed to vent, but every word in it was the truth. Nathan froze for a split second. Emma drew a deep breath and continued, her voice gaining strength. I don't hate the company. On the contrary, I want it to be better. But we're drowning in procedures. Creative ideas get crushed before they even see the light. Campaigns look spectacular, but customers don't feel anything. Everyone's exhausted, and last night, I just couldn't pretend anymore. Nathan remained silent. He had braced himself to hear excuses, yet instead he was confronted with a blunt confession, raw and direct. It unsettled him so much that he found himself staring at her longer than he intended. You realize those words could cost you your job, don't you? His tone had lost some of its edge. Emma gave a faint, awkward smile, but her gaze didn't waver. I know, but if I lose my job for telling the truth, at least I won't regret it. In that instant, Nathan felt something strange. In his world, people either cowered in fear or showered him with flattery. Never, never had anyone dared stand in front of him and speak so plainly, least of all a nameless employee. A faint, almost imperceptible smile tugged at Nathan's lips. He gave a small nod. Interesting. Emma's eyes widened in shock. She had been bracing herself for the words, "You're fired," at any second. Instead, she saw something she never imagined, the rare ghost of a smile on the CEO's face. Very well, Collins. Nathan folded his arms, his eyes still locked on hers. I won't fire you. Instead, I want to see if you have the courage to turn those criticisms into solutions. Emma froze, her heartbeat racing. What? Not fired, but challenged to prove herself? Before she could ask anything else, Nathan opened his laptop again, his tone snapping back to its usual coldness. You may leave. I'll be in touch. Emma stumbled out of the office, her chest a storm of relief and bewilderment. The heavy door closed behind her, leaving Nathan alone in silence. He sat still, contemplative, as a thought echoed in his mind. This girl, she's unlike anyone else in this company. Perhaps she's exactly what we've been missing all along. 2 days after that fateful meeting on the 25th floor, Emma still hadn't recovered. She had fully expected to be fired on the spot, yet she had walked away intact, with nothing more than the CEO's chilling words, I'll be in touch. The marketing department, of course, exploded with gossip. Collins must have been called up to get chewed out. No, I heard the CEO actually let her off without punishment. Suspicious. Maybe she's the boss's secret crush? Emma could only bury her head in her hands. If they only knew I called him cold as a wax statue, they'd already have an entire romance drama script written by now. Just then an email from the CEO's secretary popped up on her screen. Subject, assignment, CEO's request. Emma clicked, her stomach dropping. Mr. Blackwood requests Ms. Emma Collins to prepare a concrete reform proposal based on the comments in her email. Deadline, Monday morning. Presentation to the CEO directly. Emma froze. No way, he actually wants me to do it? She couldn't focus on anything for the rest of the afternoon. The words CEO's assignment spun in her mind like a curse. That night, she dialed Sophie in desperation. Sophie, I'm done for. I thought he was just scaring me, but now he wants a full-on reform proposal. Me, just a nobody. How am I supposed to reform the company? Then just write down all the stuff you've been ranting about. You complain enough that you've basically got a handbook ready. Emma groaned, smacking her pillow. Well, she's not wrong, but what if he actually implements it? The next few days, Emma locked herself in her tiny apartment, typing and muttering nonstop. Muffins sprawled across the desk, occasionally batting at the keyboard as if giving input. Finally, the proposal was complete, broken into 3 key ideas. Streamline the report approval process. Current, 5 steps moving through multiple managers before reaching the director. Proposal, only 2 steps. Direct manager and department head. Benefit, saves time, reduces overlap, speeds up response. Develop an internal platform to facilitate seamless communication and collaboration among departments. Build a unified system for communication and document sharing. Helps teams track progress and avoid duplicate work. Customer story-based marketing. Instead of glossy slides and unrealistic images, use real customer experiences to showcase your brand. Launch the From Their Voice campaign, ads that tell the journey of a real client using their product. Emma skimmed it once more and let out a bitter laugh. Done. Tomorrow I'll hand this to the CEO, and he'll laugh in my face. Who do you think you are, telling me how to run my company? Monday morning, Emma walked into the CEO's office trembling, clutching the printed proposal. Nathan was already seated, his cold eyes following her every move. "Collins, did you bring the proposal?" he asked. Yes. Here." She nearly dropped the papers as she handed them over. Nathan skimmed each page in silence, so quiet that Emma could hear her own heartbeat pounding. She braced herself for ridicule, but he read through it all, set the papers down, and looked up. "Reducing the approval process from 5 steps to 2. Bold. Don't you think middle management will push back?" Emma stammered. "They definitely will. But Dossier, if we cut the red tape, they'll save time too. It may be hard at first, but the end results will prove the point." Nathan gave a slight nod and moved on. "An internal platform for cross-department connection. Not cheap. Why should I invest?" Emma inhaled deeply. "Because the cost of employees duplicating work, waiting on approvals, and missing market opportunities is far greater." Silence stretched. Nathan twirled a silver pen in his fingers, eyes sharp as if studying her every move. Emma stood rigid, palms slick with sweat. "And finally, customer story marketing. You think that's powerful enough to change the market's perception?" "I believe so." Emma's voice was steady now. "Because customers want to see themselves in the story. They don't care about polished slides. They care about the moment they can say, 'That's me.'" Nathan placed the pen down and leaned back. His voice was calm, unreadable. "Very well, I'll pilot all of these proposals." Emma nearly fell out of her chair. What did you just say?" "You heard me." Nathan's tone was cool. "We'll test them for 1 month. If they fail, I'll hold you responsible. If they succeed, we'll discuss further." Emma sat frozen, her mouth hanging open, 1,000 thoughts racing through her head. Is he insane? What kind of CEO bets on a nobody's ideas? But Nathan had already turned back to his laptop, signaling the meeting was over. "You may go." Emma staggered out, her heart hammering. Inside the elevator, she muttered under her breath, "God, I was just venting. And now he's actually doing it." As the doors closed, Nathan sat alone in his office, eyes sharp and contemplative. He wasn't sure if Emma's proposals would succeed, but one thing was certain. In a sea of nodding heads, someone had finally dared to look straight at the problem, and he wanted to see just how far that girl could go. A month passed faster than Emma could believe. Ever since her proposal had been put into motion, the company had felt like it was living through some sort of unexpected experiment. At first, no one thought it would work. Mid-level managers scowled and whispered in the hallways, "A lowly junior dares to suggest reforming our processes?" The CEO's just humoring her. "He'll drop it soon." Exactly. This will fizzle out like every other half-baked initiative. Emma thought the same. Every day at work felt like sitting on hot coals, waiting for the pilot to collapse and for the blame to land squarely on her shoulders. But then, the things she had hastily typed out in that email slowly began to take shape. Previously, a single marketing report had to crawl through 5 rounds of approval. Team lead, mid-level manager, department manager, deputy director, and finally the department head. Each round ate up days, not to mention the endless back-and-forth revisions. Now, under the new system, only 2 steps remained: team lead and department head. On the first day of implementation, confusion reigned. People muttered complaints. But after just 2 weeks, the results were undeniable. Reports were approved 3 times faster. Campaigns that once stalled for a month were launching within a week. In the break room, an employee exclaimed, "I can't believe I'm actually going home at 7 instead of 10. Another laughed. "Thanks to cutting the red tape, I finally have time to focus on creativity instead of filling out justification forms." Emma overheard these words, her chest loosening in relief. She had never imagined that an idea she once dismissed as childish would save so much time for so many. Meanwhile, the internal platform connecting departments was also rolled out. Instead of endless email chains, employees could now track progress on a shared system. The creative team saw what design was working on, and sales instantly updated customer feedback. At first, the groans were loud. "Another software? Who has time to learn this?" But soon, as workflows smoothed out, attitudes shifted. A concept from creative design reached a concept in 2 days instead of a week. Feedback from a client was received by marketing within hours, and the revised content followed almost immediately. The atmosphere began to change. Meetings grew lighter. Ideas flowed more freely. People no longer feared their suggestions would be killed on arrival. Emma sat quietly among them, caught between exhilaration and dread. If this truly worked, the CEO might start thinking she had real talent. But she wasn't a genius. She had just gotten lucky. The highlight came with the new marketing campaign, From Their Voice, built on real customer stories instead of glossy slides. Emma's team interviewed a young mother who had used the company's product to start her home business. Instead of flashy promises, the campaign showed her sweat, tears, and triumphs. The video went viral, garnering millions of views in just a week. Comments poured in, "Finally an ad that actually looks like my life." Sales of the featured products spiked 20% within the quarter. The board convened an emergency session to analyze the numbers. This campaign cost less than any before, and the returns are beyond expectation. This could be a new direction for the entire company. Emma shrank into her seat at the back of the boardroom, desperate not to be noticed. But Nathan's eyes at the head of the table found her anyway. He hadn't said much during the meeting. He only listened, watching the numbers and absorbing the reactions. But every so often, his gaze lingered on Emma, not with the same icy detachment as before, but with something sharper mixed with curiosity, acknowledgement, and maybe even amusement. Emma's cheeks burned as she ducked behind her laptop. "Stop looking at me. I never meant to actually impress you." When the meeting ended, a senior director rose and asked directly, "Sir, where exactly did this initiative originate?" The room went dead quiet. Nathan's lips curved faintly, his voice deep and clear. "From an employee who dared to speak the truth. Collins." Every head turned toward Emma. Her stomach flipped, her heart nearly burst out of her chest. Some faces showed clear annoyance. But with the CEO himself backing her, no one dared to object. Nathan stood, closing the meeting with finality. "I don't care about rank. I care about results, and the results speak for themselves." Emma sat frozen, caught between shame, disbelief, and, unexpectedly, happiness. That afternoon, as the boardroom emptied, Emma was gathering her papers when Nathan's voice came from behind her. "You did better than I thought." She spun around, startled. Nathan stood there, hands in his pockets, his eyes still cool, but his tone had softened. "I used to think you only knew how to complain. Turns out, you have talent." Emma flushed scarlet, stammering, I just wrote down what everyone sees. I'm not." Nathan's smile was fleeting, almost imperceptible. "But you were the only one who dared to write it down. That makes the difference." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma rooted in the hallway, her heart still racing. That night, back in her small apartment, Emma sat at her desk watching Muffin snore peacefully. She smiled faintly, replaying Nathan's words and the way his eyes had looked at her earlier. Did he really mean it? Does he actually think I have talent? The question hung in the quiet air, making her shiver, and yet somehow it warmed her heart. She didn't know it yet, but from this moment on, her life had officially turned a new page. The page that one disastrous email had accidentally opened. The buzz around the Real Customer Story campaign was still hot across the company. Departments were abuzz, and many admitted the new reforms had lightened their workload. But one question lingered on everyone's lips. Why had the famously cold CEO, Nathan Blackwood, suddenly put his trust in an unknown employee like Emma Collins? That question haunted Emma, too. She was both scared and strangely intrigued. Nathan hadn't fired her. Instead, he had publicly credited her. And that Friday morning, things grew even more unbelievable. While Emma was busy editing a report, a message popped up on her screen. Today, 12:30 p.m., La Fontaine. Don't be late. -NB. Emma blinked at the screen in shock. Colleagues crowded around instantly, curious. Who sent that? Oh my God, NB! That's Nathan Blackwood, isn't it? La Fontaine? The fanciest French restaurant in town. Emma hurriedly covered her screen, waving them off. No, it's nothing. Probably a mistake. But inside her heart was pounding. Lunch? With the CEO? That couldn't be real. LaFontaine sat atop a luxury hotel, the pinnacle of fine French dining. When Emma timidly stepped inside, she nearly turned right back around. Leather chairs, golden light, a violin playing softly. Everything was worlds away from her usual sandwich lunches. Nathan was already seated at a window table, looking composed, though his gaze was still sharp. He gave her a small nod. Right on time. Sit down. Emma swallowed hard, pulled out a chair, and forced a nervous smile. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. He handed her the menu. Order whatever you like. Emma flipped it open and nearly fainted at the prices. $45 for a salad, $70 for salmon. She swallowed and blurted out, I'll just have the vegetable soup. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That's all? Yes. I'm not very hungry. She gave a weak laugh, though her stomach growled in protest. To her shock, Nathan actually chuckled. A soft, amused sound she had never heard from the cold CEO. Very well. One vegetable soup, and for me, steak and red wine. Emma blushed, muttering under her breath. Great. You'll be having steak while I sit here with soup, like a college student who wandered into the VIP lounge. Nathan set the menu down, his eyes glinting with something almost playful. I find that contrast quite interesting. When the food arrived, Emma kept her eyes glued to her little bowl of soup, trying to ignore the intoxicating aroma of steak wafting across the table. Then Nathan set his utensils aside, leaned forward and said, Collins, I didn't invite you here to talk about reports or numbers. I want to know who you really are. Emma froze. Who I am. I've seen you at work, frank, direct, a little reckless. But I want to know the person behind that. Emma blinked rapidly. Was the CEO actually making small talk with a low-level employee? Flustered, she let out a laugh. Well, I think I'm just an ordinary girl. I grew up in the suburbs. My parents are both teachers. I've lived frugally all my life, as you probably noticed, like ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. Nathan nodded slightly, his eyes intent on her words. Coffee? Sorry? I've heard you drink black coffee every morning. Emma laughed. Yes, that's true. The cheapest kind from the corner cafe. No caramel, no fancy nut milks, just straight black. I like the bitterness. It wakes me up and reminds me that life isn't always sweet. Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, when I was young, I drank black coffee too. My father started every day with it, and I followed. Perhaps that's one rare thing we share. Emma looked up, surprised. For an instant, Nathan wasn't the cold CEO, but simply a man recalling his childhood. And dreams? He asked. Emma hesitated. I once dreamed of being a writer, to tell stories that truly touched people. But I chose marketing instead, because in a way, marketing is also storytelling, just aimed at many people and with the goal of selling something. Nathan tilted his head, the faintest smile ghosting across his lips. An interesting perspective. And you, Emma dared to ask, what did you dream of, Mr. Blackwood? Nathan faltered, just slightly. No one in the company had ever asked him that. His gaze drifted past the window, a distant look. I dreamed of becoming someone my father could be proud of. He built this empire from nothing. I'm just carrying it on. The words were simple, but his voice carried a weight. Emma realized that behind the icy exterior was a man still haunted by expectations and duty. She smiled softly. I think if he saw the company today, he'd be proud. Nathan turned, meeting her eyes. For a moment, the air stilled. His gaze no longer dissected her. It carried something warmer. Lunch ended. As they rose, Nathan spoke quietly. Collins, you are not at all what I expected. Outwardly light-hearted, maybe even clumsy, but inside you have both intellect and heart. That's rare in this world. Emma's face flushed scarlet. She waved her hands quickly. You're exaggerating. I only ordered vegetable soup. Nathan laughed again, a sound so rare that even the waitstaff glanced over in surprise. On the way back to the office, Emma sneaked glances at him walking beside her. Maybe he isn't just a wax statue after all. And Nathan, deep inside, found himself wondering for the first time in years, had he just stumbled upon something he thought he'd lost long ago? Something called honesty? The success of the Real Customer Story campaign swept through the company like a fresh wind. The press praised it, sales soared, and the board was thrilled. But down on the lower floors, among employees and middle managers, another wave was rising, suspicion and jealousy. At first, it was just whispers in the break room. Who even is she to get praised by the CEO? Collins something. I've never even heard of her. Talent. Please, people who climb fast usually just know how to flatter the boss. Within days, those murmurs morphed into full-blown rumors. Emma had risen because she sucked up to the CEO. Emma felt it the moment she stepped into the elevator. Colleagues who used to greet her cheerfully now went silent when she walked in. In the cafeteria, the seat beside her stayed empty, while every other table was crowded. One person even muttered, "Careful, sit too close to Collins and they'll think you're cozying up to the CEO too." Emma heard it clearly, but only gave a bitter smile. In meetings, whenever she spoke, managers avoided her eyes, instead scribbling in their notebooks while listening. A small suggestion of hers was shot down as unrealistic, even though the same idea had been praised when someone else presented it weeks earlier. Once Emma walked into the break room, and the conversation between two colleagues died instantly. One of them gave an awkward smile, grabbed their coffee, and walked out. Emma sat down, glanced at Muffin's picture on her phone screen, and muttered to herself with a wry grin. This really is like a soap opera. The heroine gets ostracized by the entire company, all because of one missent email. But inside, the sting was real. She tried to act strong, but Emma was just a regular girl. She needed friends, and she feared isolation. Instead of crying in public, she chose humor as her shield. One afternoon during a marketing team discussion, a manager said with thinly veiled sarcasm, "Guess we don't need to worry about this idea. Let the CEO's favorite make the decision." The room went tense. All eyes turned to Emma, waiting to see how she would react. She smiled, crossed her arms, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "If people hate me for being honest, at least I've earned the title of most annoyingly honest employee of the year." A few people burst out laughing despite themselves. The tension eased, though cold stares still cut into her. Emma stepped out of the meeting and drew a deep breath. Her joke had saved her pride, but her heart still felt heavy. She hadn't wanted to become the thorn in everyone's side. Meanwhile, on the 25th floor, Nathan hadn't missed a thing. His secretary and several directors reported on the growing hostility. Emma was being isolated, and the rumors were spreading rapidly. One afternoon, Nathan passed by the cafeteria and spotted her. Emma was sitting alone in a corner, picking at a takeout salad, while every other table buzzed with chatter. He paused, watching for a few seconds, his eyes darkening. Part of him wanted to walk over, sit beside her, and make a statement of support, but reason held him back. If he showed open favoritism now, it would only fuel the rumors. He walked away uneasy. This girl had sparked change in the company, yet now she was being cast out by her peers. Could she endure it? Another day, Emma overheard two middle managers arguing in the hallway. "That project only succeeded because the CEO forced us to follow that girl's idea." Maybe, but the numbers don't lie. What if she really does have the ability? Ability? Don't be naive. She climbed her way up another way. Emma had heard every word. She didn't step in. She just walked past, lips twisting into a self-mocking smile. Another episode of the drama, The Girl Who Flattered the Boss. But that night, back in her small apartment, clutching Muffin in her arms, the tears finally came. "I never wanted this. I just wrote an email to vent. How did it come to this?" The next morning, Emma looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, but there was a spark of determination there. "Collins, you survived sending that disastrous email to the CEO. You'll survive this storm of rumors, too." She wiped her tears, straightened her shirt, and stepped out of her apartment with steadier strides. At the weekly meeting, when another manager made a cutting remark, Emma smiled and replied simply, "I can't control what people think about me, but I can prove myself through my work." The room went silent for a few beats. Upstairs, Nathan received updates on the marketing team. He knew Emma was enduring cruel gossip. His grip tightened on his silver pen. He wanted to defend her, to tell everyone the recent success had nothing to do with favoritism and everything to do with her ability. But Nathan knew if he stepped in now, the whispers of, "Collins is just cozying up to the boss," would only roar louder. He had to wait for the right moment to prove the truth beyond any doubt. Gazing out the glass wall of his office, Nathan thought, "Collins, can you endure this? Are you strong enough to outlast it?" His eyes dimmed, but his mind was firm. When the time was right, he would stand up for her openly. That night, Emma sat at her desk, scrolling back to that email, the one that had started it all. She gave a bitter laugh. One wrong click, and here came the storm. Muffin yawned, sprawled across the keyboard, blocking the screen. Emma laughed softly, stroking his fur. "At least I still have you. And I still have myself." Her eyes glimmered with resolve. No matter the rumors or the isolation, she wouldn't back down. For the first time in her life, she felt her voice truly mattered. Still following the story? If this found you outside Soul Stories, welcome home. Comment below. What story do you want to hear next? The largest conference hall in the Blackwood Group headquarters glowed under bright lights. Hundreds of employees filled the seats, the air thick with both excitement and tension. It was the quarterly all-hands meeting, the event where CEO Nathan Blackwood personally reported results and announced new directions. Emma sat near the back, her heart pounding. She knew last quarter's revenue had surged thanks largely to the From Their Voice campaign, but that fact didn't calm her nerves. The rumors hadn't stopped. In the hallways, in the break room, even at her own desk, whispers lingered. Without the CEO, what would she have done? She's just a front. A nobody suddenly turned into a hero? Ridiculous. Emma sighed, staring down at her notepad, telling herself, "Don't expect anything. Today he'll talk about the company's overall success, not about me." The heavy doors swung open. Nathan entered, tall and commanding in a gray suit. Everyone stood, applauding. He nodded curtly and strode to the podium, his presence filling the hall. Opening his laptop, his voice rang deep and clear. This past quarter, revenue increased by 20%. Efficiency rose by 30%. These are numbers to be proud of. Thunderous applause echoed. Managers smiled, relieved and proud. But Nathan didn't smile. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the hall. "But today, I don't just want to talk about numbers. I want to talk about the reason behind them." Silence fell instantly. Nathan lowered his voice, each word deliberate. That 20% revenue increase came from one idea. Not from me, not from the board, but from an employee who dared to tell the truth. Hundreds of eyes darted around. "Who does he mean? Could it be—" Emma froze. For a heartbeat, her chest forgot to rise. Nathan continued. "The streamlined processes, the internal platform, and the real customer story campaign all began with one criticism. A criticism many of you dismissed." Several managers frowned, knowing exactly what he referred to. Nathan stopped, then spoke the name plainly. "That person is Emma Collins." The room felt like the air had been sucked out. A heavy pause hung, broken only by the sound of a pen clattering to the floor. Emma sat rigid, every head turned toward her. Some faces showed shock, others disapproval, and a few, unexpected respect. She wanted to sink into her seat, disappear from the spotlight, yet her chest surged with emotion. He just said my name. He just defended me, openly. Nathan looked straight toward the back rows, his voice softer, warmer than usual. Collins wasn't the only one who saw the problems, but she was the only one who dared to write them down. And more importantly, she turned complaints into solutions. That is what this company needs. Applause trickled at first, just a few younger employees. Then it spread, building until it filled the hall. Cold stares still lingered, but the clapping drowned them out. Emma bit her lip, vision blurring with tears. Days of isolation and doubt washed away in that instant. For the first time in her life, she felt her voice truly mattered, and the most powerful man in the company had acknowledged it. She longed to stand and say something, but her throat locked. All she could do was bow her head, fists clenched, letting the tears fall silently. In the front row, some middle managers kept their faces neutral, but inside they burned. One leaned toward another and muttered, "The CEO's openly backing her now. No one can touch her." Meanwhile, the eyes of younger staff lit up. To them, Emma became a symbol, proof that if you dared to speak the truth and had good ideas, even a nobody could change the company. Nathan looked around and gave a small nod. "I want everyone to understand. At Blackwood Group, titles don't matter as much as results. Anyone has the right to speak the truth, as long as it comes with solutions. If you have ideas, don't be afraid to share them. Speak up." The hall erupted again, louder, more genuine than before. Nathan closed his laptop, bringing the meeting to a close. He stepped down from the podium without another word, but as he passed, his eyes flicked toward Emma. Just a brief look, calm yet steady. Enough for her to know he had just placed a shield around her for everyone to see. As the crowd dispersed, a few younger colleagues approached her with smiles. "Congratulations, Collins." "Great idea, you were spot on." Emma returned their smiles faintly, her heart still trembling. There were still hostile glances, but at least she wasn't completely alone anymore. Turning to leave, she caught sight of Nathan standing near the door. He didn't speak, just gave her a subtle nod. But his gaze, steady and deep, made Emma's chest tighten in a way she couldn't explain. Emma hadn't planned to drink more, but it was an old friend's birthday party. Saying no would have killed the fun. After 2 cocktails, her head was light and her steps out of the bar felt like she was dancing tango. Her friends begged her to join them for karaoke, but Emma waved them off. "No way. If I keep going, I won't make it to work tomorrow." She staggered down a street glowing with neon. The night air was crisp, traffic humming in the distance. Then from the corner, the sound of a saxophone drifted. Warm, velvety, pulling her to a stop. A wooden sign swung gently. Blue Note Jazz Club. Jazz? Fine. 1 drink. Maybe it'll sober me up, Emma mumbled, pushing the door open. Inside was another world. Golden lights, tiny wooden tables, old paintings on the walls. A trio played, saxophone melting into the piano's rhythm. Emma sat at the bar and raised her hand. "The cheapest glass of wine you've got." The bartender raised an eyebrow but nodded. Emma smiled to herself, chin resting in her hand as she let the music wash over her. She had no idea that in the far corner, Nathan Blackwood was sitting too. Nathan came here occasionally, to a place where few recognized him. Here he could simply sit, listen to jazz, and not wear the mask of a CEO. But tonight, his gaze caught a familiar figure. Emma Collins. Her small frame, hair slightly mussed, cheeks rosy from alcohol. She tapped her fingers to the beat, eyes half closed. Nathan raised his brow, hesitated a second, then rose and crossed the room. Emma opened her eyes and nearly dropped her glass. "Wait, Mr. Blackwood?" Nathan set a hand on the back of the chair opposite her. "May I?" Emma giggled, her voice already tipsy. "Of course. But warning, I've had just enough to tell the truth." Nathan pulled out the chair, lips curving faintly. "Then speak." Music swirled around them. Emma leaned on the table, staring at him. "You know, you're actually very handsome." Nathan tilted his head. "Should I say thank you?" "But handsome is useless. You're as cold as a freezer." Her voice rang loud enough that a few patrons glanced over. Emma slapped a hand over her mouth, then burst out laughing. Nathan studied her for a beat. Then, unexpectedly, laughed too. A deep, rich laugh that made Emma freeze. "You're probably the only one who's ever said that to me." "Great. I'll put it on my resume. First employee to call the CEO a freezer." Emma swirled her glass, grinning as if she'd found a new game. Nathan shook his head, but the smile lingered. They sat, letting the music carry their words. Emma told stories of her suburban childhood, Summer bike rides through fields, sneaking ice cream before dinner in winter. Nathan listened quietly, nodding now and then. When his turn came, he shared how his father used to take him to jazz clubs when he was a boy. Emma blinked. So you do have warm memories? I thought you were born in a suit with that ice-cold face. Nathan shot her a look, half smile, half exasperation. Collins, the more you drink, the bolder you get. Told you. Alcohol makes me honest. She clinked her glass against the air. A short silence followed, not awkward, but oddly comfortable. Their eyes met, golden light flickering between them. Near midnight, the band ended their set. Emma stood, wobbling. Nathan caught her before she toppled. I'll take you home. I can go myself. She tried to push him away, then sagged against his shoulder. Okay, maybe not. Nathan guided her outside, down a street glowing with soft lamps. Emma muttered as they walked. The freezer laughed. Must be the end of the world. Nathan shook his head, though a smile tugged at his lips. At her apartment door, Emma fumbled endlessly with her keys. Nathan finally took them gently, unlocked the door, and held it open for them. She looked up at him with a wide grin. Thanks, my cute freezer. And before he could react, she slipped inside, shutting the door. Nathan stood there, then chuckled softly to himself before turning away. The news broke on a Monday morning. Emma had barely stepped into the office when she noticed everyone huddled around the big screen, their faces a mix of curiosity and shock. Splashed across the front page of a major financial paper was a bold headline. Blackwood CEO success, thanks to special relationship with a subordinate. Beneath it a photo, Nathan and Emma leaving the jazz club that night. Nathan leaning in to steady her, Emma smiling brightly, clearly tipsy. The office erupted. Oh my God, that's Collins. No wonder. The rumors were true. Never thought CEO Blackwood. Emma went cold, blood draining from her face, heart hammering. She rushed forward and read the article. According to sources, the reform ideas that boosted Blackwood Group's quarterly growth by 20% didn't come from the CEO, but from a low-level employee. The question is, does Nathan Blackwood still have the competence to lead, or is he relying on a special relationship to maintain his image? Emma dropped the paper, her hands trembling. No, this can't be happening. Within hours, social media exploded. Articles and images spread like wildfire. The cold CEO knows how to play favoritism after all. Who is Emma Collins and why did she change the whole company? Blackwood Group, growing on romance, not strategy. The office phone rang nonstop. Reporters demanded interviews. Outside, the company gates swarmed with photographers, cameras flashing at anyone who walked out. Emma was trapped in the eye of the storm. In the hallways, stares grew harsher. Some shook their heads in pity, others smirked with disdain. Knew it. No one climbs that fast without a reason. Poor CEO, dragged down by some girl. Emma bit her lip hard, forcing herself toward her desk, but her hands shook so badly that her papers spilled across the floor. Meanwhile, on the 25th floor, Nathan faced an emergency meeting with the board and major shareholders. One shareholder tapped his fingers on the table. Nathan, you need to explain. The press is saying this company runs on low-level employees. If that's true, then your leadership... Another cut in sharply. We invested in Blackwood Group because of you. But the stock dropped 5% this morning alone. The media's calling us a circus. Nathan sat upright, his gaze icy. Numbers don't lie. 20% growth is real. I won't deny that Emma Collins had valuable ideas. But a CEO isn't supposed to do everything. A CEO chooses the right people and empowers them. His words were firm, but worry lingered. One shareholder sighed heavily. Nathan, whatever the truth, this personal relationship angle will keep being exploited. If you don't act, the company will suffer. Nathan tightened his grip on his pen. He knew where every arrow was pointing now. At Emma. That afternoon, Emma was summoned to the HR department. Inside, two middle managers waited, eyes cold. Collins, do you know why you're here? One asked. Emma swallowed. Because of this morning's article. Exactly. You've become the center of a scandal. Regardless of the truth, The company's image is suffering. The other leaned forward, voice dripping with smugness. We believe it's best if you resign voluntarily. Consider it protecting Blackwood Group's reputation. Emma went still. In that instant, she understood. They wanted her as the scapegoat, the sacrifice to shield the CEO. But I didn't do anything wrong. Her voice cracked. Wrong or not, the media doesn't care. The manager shrugged. This is the fastest way to end the scandal. Emma bit her lip until it bled. That night she sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the half-written resignation letter. Muffin curled up beside her, purring softly. She pulled at her hair, her heart torn to pieces. Part of her wanted to scream, to fight the injustice. But another part thought of Nathan. If she stayed, the scandal wouldn't end. The press would keep hammering. The shareholders would keep doubting. And Nathan, the man who trusted her, who defended her publicly, would bear the brunt of it all. Emma inhaled shakily and set pen to paper. Her handwriting wavered but stayed firm. Letter of resignation, Emma Collins. She lifted her head, whispering, At least, this time I can protect him. The next morning, Emma carried the letter to HR. The office buzzed with whispers and stares. She walked with her back straight, eyes fixed forward, ignoring them all. Placing the letter on the desk, she felt strangely light, though her eyes burned with unshed tears. Elsewhere, Nathan received the news. His hand froze mid-air, his usually composed face darkening. Collins, did you really think I'd let this end like this? His voice was low, but in his eyes flared a fierce, unshakable resolve. Rain poured down over the city in sheets. Wind lashed against the windows, blurring the streetlights into hazy smears of gold. Emma sat motionless in her small apartment, having already submitted the resignation letter that afternoon. On the table, an open suitcase lay neatly packed. Tomorrow morning she would leave Blackwood Group for good, to spare Nathan from more scandal. Muffin was curled up on top of the suitcase, staring at her as if asking, Are you really leaving? Emma sighed, running a hand down his back. I don't have any other choice. Then came the pounding at the door, so loud it drowned out the storm. Emma frowned and opened it, and her heart stopped. Nathan Blackwood stood there. The tall man dressed in a dark suit was soaked through, his black hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. Water streamed down his chiseled face, but his eyes burned fiercely. My God, why are you? Emma began, but Nathan stepped straight inside. His wet shoes left long streaks across the wooden floor as he slammed the door shut behind him. He turned, his gaze searing her with a mix of anger and anguish. What do you think you're doing, Collins? Emma backed up, her voice trembling. I just don't want the company to suffer because of me. I don't want the scandal to cost you everything. Nathan's fists clenched. He strode over to the suitcase, glaring at it, before swinging his gaze back to her. His voice rolled out like thunder. And you think running away will fix it? Emma pressed her lips together, fighting to stay calm. If I leave, the rumors will die down. They won't target you anymore. Fool! Nathan roared, his voice rattling the tiny apartment. You're not just an employee. Emma froze, her heart slamming in her chest. Nathan stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until only a breath remained. His eyes were no longer cold, but blazing. You're the first person who ever dared tell me the truth. The first person who made me want to change. The first who made me laugh for real. The words tumbled out, tearing away the armor he had worn for so long. Emma's mind spun. She couldn't speak. Outside, the rain hammered harder. Lightning split the sky, illuminating their faces as they stood inches apart. Emma's voice shook as she whispered, Nathan, He didn't let her finish. Nathan shrugged off his drenched suit jacket, wrung it out sharply, then draped it over her shoulders, shielding her from the drops dripping through the leaky ceiling. In that moment, Emma lifted her gaze and met his eyes. No longer the cold CEO, no longer the freezer, only a man looking at her with unguarded honesty. Nathan reached out, pulling her against him. His embrace was strong, his warmth overwhelming. The scent of rain, damp wood, and his subtle cologne wrapped around her, making her chest tighten until she thought her heart might burst. "Don't leave," Nathan whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I won't allow it." Emma buried her face into his shoulder, her eyes shimmering with tears. For the first time, she felt her heartbeat align perfectly with someone else's. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside his arms, safe, fierce, unyielding, Emma knew she didn't want to walk away anymore. That morning, the Grand Hall of Blackwood Group was packed wall-to-wall with reporters. Camera flashes went off like fireworks, the air thick with tension. The scandal was still blazing hot, and everyone was waiting to see how CEO Nathan Blackwood would respond. Emma sat nervously in the guest section, clutching her bag, her heart hammering in her chest. Nathan hadn't told her his plan. His secretary had only sent a short invitation card with 2 words: "Be there." When Nathan walked onto the stage, the room instantly fell silent. He wore a sharp black suit, tall and commanding, his eyes cutting across the crowd. Taking the microphone, his voice rang deep and steady. "Thank you all for coming. I know the past few days have been filled with rumors about the Blackwood Group and about me personally. Today I'll address them directly." The cameras flashed wildly. Nathan went on without the slightest hesitation. "First, let me make it clear. Blackwood Group's growth has nothing to do with a so-called personal relationship. It came from genuine reform, and I want to state openly, the person who initiated that reform was an employee who dared to speak the truth. Emma Collins." The hall erupted with murmurs. Emma froze, heat rushing to her face. Nathan raised a hand, silencing the crowd, then continued. "But Collins is not an exception. She is proof of something I believe deeply. Every voice in this company has value. I want each of you to follow her example. Speak up, share ideas, be honest." He paused, then looked straight into the camera. "That's why I am officially creating a new department. Reform. Any employee can submit complaints, proposals, or ideas anonymously, and Collins will lead it." Reporters gasped. One shot his hand up immediately. "Mr. Blackwood, does this mean Collins is being formally appointed to a new position?" Nathan nodded. "Exactly. And I trust she will do it well." In the guest row, Emma's jaw dropped. Dear God, he just promoted me in front of the entire national press. The atmosphere heated up. Questions bombarded him. "Mr. Blackwood, what about the rumors of a personal relationship between you and Ms. Collins? Isn't this favoritism? Will shareholders accept this decision?" Nathan didn't dodge. Instead, he turned toward the guest section, his eyes locking on Emma. Then, before hundreds of flashing lenses, he strode down the steps, straight to her. Emma's breath caught, her hands trembling as Nathan extended his hand. "Stand up," he said, voice firm and resolute. She bit her lip, hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Nathan gripped it tightly, leading her onto the stage. The cameras exploded in a frenzy. Reporters shouted, and the crowd roared. Nathan turned, lifting their joined hands high, his voice carrying over the chaos. "This is not a secret affair. This is trust. I trust her, and I want everyone else to trust her too." The hall erupted. Some reporters even jumped from their seats. Emma's face burned crimson, her heart pounding out of control. Standing beside Nathan, it felt as if she'd been swept into the eye of a hurricane of light and sound. When the press conference ended, reporters swarmed the hallways. Microphones and cameras pressed into her face. "Ms. Collins, how do you feel about the CEO defending you publicly? Do you believe you're capable of leading the new reform department? Are you dating the CEO?" Emma stammered, cheeks blazing. I just did my job. I never imagined it would turn into this." Before more could be thrown at her, Nathan pulled her close, his arm shielding her from the barrage. "Enough," his cold voice cut, silencing the frenzy for a beat. Emma followed him out of the hall, dazed. Embarrassment and happiness churned inside her. Part of her wanted to scream, "This wasn't my plan." But another part secretly trembled at the memory of his hand holding her so firmly in front of the world. That evening, headlines splashed across every major outlet. Blackwood CEO defends low-level employee launches new reform department. Emma Collins, from unknown staffer to bold truth teller. Social media lit up. She's literally the heroine of a romance novel. Every company needs a Collins. Cold CEO holds her hand on stage. I'm shipping this couple. At home, Emma flopped on the sofa with Muffin, scrolling through the flood of memes and headlines. She groaned, covering her face. Great. I've become a meme. Her phone buzzed. A message from a familiar number lit up the screen. Sleep early. Tomorrow meet me in the reform office. -NB. Emma laughed, her cheeks hot. Not just a handhold. Now I have my own office. And a CEO who's not such a freezer anymore. A year passed so quickly that Emma sometimes still couldn't believe it had all been real. Blackwood Group was now praised in the press as one of the most open and forward-thinking companies in the industry. The anonymous suggestion inbox, managed by the new reform department, had received thousands of ideas, from small requests such as better coffee in the cafeteria to large initiatives that saved millions in operating costs. Work efficiency was steady, employees were happier, and no one complained about being bogged down in red tape anymore. Brainstorming sessions were lively, full of laughter, and Emma, once the anonymous employee who had sent a disastrous email by mistake, was now the head of the reform department, respected throughout the company. Of course, she still kept her signature, Emma style, witty and practical. In a recent meeting when one manager grumbled that his staff talks too much, Emma replied deadpan, "Good. At least they're saying something real, not just nodding like robots." The whole room burst out laughing, and Nathan, seated at the head of the table, hid a smile tugging at his lips. That weekend night, Emma stayed late at the office. The 25th floor was silent, lit only by the glow of her laptop and the steady rhythm of her typing. She was reviewing new proposals when her inbox pinged with a fresh email. She frowned. "This late? Who's writing me now?" Click. Sender, Nathan Blackwood. Subject, "One more mistake." Emma's brows shot up. She opened it and read the short message. "Collins, this time you can missend all you want, but you must reply yes to my proposal." Emma froze. Her eyes blinked rapidly, then laughter bubbled out of her chest. She laughed so hard that Muffin, the cat now famous across the office, lifted his head in confusion. "Oh my God, all this because of one missent email last year?" She giggled, clutching her stomach. The office door swung open. Nathan walked in. No suit, no tie, just a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, looking disarmingly simple. In his hand was a small velvet box. "I thought you should answer in person, not over email," he said. His deep voice softened, eyes unusually bright. Emma was still laughing, tears streaming now from both joy and amusement. "You are officially the CEO with the weirdest proposal style in the world." Nathan came closer and opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. Nothing flashy, just timeless. "Collins, I'm not good with sweet words, but I know this. I want you by my side, not just at work, but for life." Emma looked at the ring, then at the man she had once called a freezer. Now in his eyes there was only unshakable sincerity. She took a breath, whispering softly but clearly enough for the whole room to hear. "Yes." Nathan smiled, a rare, radiant smile. He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. No storms, no scandals, just two people, a tight embrace, and an unspoken promise. Emma laughed through her tears, her eyes sparkling. So one wrong click really could change my whole life. Later, an internal company-wide email appeared. The last line made everyone burst out laughing. "P.S. The CEO just proposed to the head of reform. She said yes. So everyone, work hard because the wedding cake is coming." The boardroom exploded with laughter, applause, and teasing cheers. Emma blushed scarlet, but inside her heart was overflowing with happiness.